How'd it go? Oh.
We're going live. The second level of live.
I don't see it. Hey everyone, it's your girl Angie Winder here again, your host for the RTV Project Radio Show. We're doing some amazing things in the community, and we are just so happy to have yet another informative and empowering segment with a great topic. The topic is human trafficking. Yes. So I'm again here with my co-host. We're going to tag team this, but my co-host, my guest co-host until he become permanent. But Brother Juan Nance. So I'm so happy to have you with us on today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course, always. We have a phenomenal topic. I think is a very interesting one as well that we have to tackle together. I love that the key word for me was collaborative, and so that right there showed that there's a lot of agencies, a lot of people, just all hands on deck. So we are here with special guests on this evening. Councilman Christopher Burnett. He is in District 8. Yeah. All right, now you're welcome. We have Tiffany Macklin. She is the let me get her role right. Oh, she is the human trafficking coordinator over at the state's attorney's office. Nice. Nice. We have Monique Smith person here, and she is the founder of Known as Monique. So thank y'all for being our guest to talk about this great topic that I think a lot of people need to know about. Not only are we going to talk about an upcoming event, but we're going to get in the meat of just some things that we can learn together as a community. Okay? Is that all right? Okay. So if you can, if there's anything as far as an intro that you would like to say, please do that at this moment, and then we get into the meat of the questions. Anything that you like to say?
Well, I personally wanted to say it's a great interviewing topic. It's desperately needed right now, highlighting and focusing, like you said, the collaborative efforts. Again, it takes a village, and the same thing that goes when a child goes missing. Right, the first thing you think of is human trafficking, and what we can all do to bridge a speedier recovery, and that's really key, is to get that child home and the loved ones the resources that they need. So thank you for that.
Oh, awesome. I like the intro because it just gives you a great feeling to know that you're doing your purpose in life. Just really quickly, there are some things that we can do to interact. I love interaction, and one of the things is please make sure that you're viewing the show on our RadioOnFire.com Facebook page. That way you see the entire view of these wonderful guests that took the time to come out on this lovely hot evening. Also, what you could do is you can call in. I've added this information onto my live video that I'm getting ready to turn off. But the phone number is 404-436-1277. Again, it's 404-436-1277. Thank y'all, and again, please make sure y'all tune in and engage. So, human trafficking. And I started doing some homework. As y'all probably saw, I was pulling articles up. I mean, old ones, but it was still good, the meat of it. And so, could you just tell us about human trafficking? And I'll pitch that over to you, Councilman.
Yeah, so it's a modern day form of slavery. Is the best way the people need to understand that piece. There are millions of people across the globe that are trafficked. But more importantly, it's something that, not more importantly, but in Baltimore City, it's a huge issue. Because wherever it's going down is a huge problem. But it is the exploitation of people for sex or commercial use. So it's either you're sex trafficking or labor trafficking, if people understand it. And it's a huge problem, especially in the Baltimore area, due to our proximity to New York, Philadelphia, DC, the 95 corridor, 295 corridor, 70. We have major sporting events. We have stadiums. We have a lot that makes it attractive for human traffickers to move people in, to take advantage of young people, young adults. I believe the average age is 12.
Yes, it's 12.
And when young people are trafficked, and they're being coerced into doing this work. And so it's something that I didn't run on. That's something that I didn't know a tremendous amount of information about until last year. And I got a call from a constituent who said, "Councilman, one of my students went missing, and was believed to be trafficked in DC, and you need to do something about it. Now, mind you, I didn't know anything about the issue, so I did what every politician does. I said, well, look, let's call a hearing, right? Yeah. Let's bring this issue to the forefront. We went through, there's a national, a statewide task force, the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force. We went on their website, we pulled a list of all the organizations that were a part of that task force, invited them out, invited every law enforcement agency out, the school system, survivors. We tried to do as much as we could do to put everybody in the room, and my colleague Councilman Cohen on the Education and Youth Committee on the council pulled the hearing together for me. And I can tell you it was one of the hardest, to date, the hardest hearing I've sat in. To hear the stories of survivors, to hear the challenges that law enforcement face at bringing and holding traffickers accountable. It was a very eye-opening experience for me. But one of the big outcomes was that I didn't feel like there was a lot going on. There's a lot of great organizations that are doing a lot of great work in Baltimore City and regionally. But it was also very clear that, especially on the law enforcement front, there wasn't a lot of coordination and collaboration going on.
Yes.
There were, even within the Baltimore Police Department, you had, the vice unit wasn't necessarily working with missing children, who wasn't really working with internet crimes, not really sharing information between agencies. And like I said, it's a regional issue.
Yes.
So if you aren't working collaboratively, we're never going to get this issue resolved. And so I looked at sort of best practices. What are other places doing? And so we decided to join a network under the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force, and joining several other municipalities.
I read that.
I put a bill in last July that created the task force, and then we had to get a couple months under our belt to figure out what this could look like, and pulled it together. So our first meeting was in December. We have over 50 organizations representing nonprofits, representing victim services organizations, law enforcement organizations, school system, anybody that has anything to do with this issue, we pulled it in. And it's a very complex one, right? Because when you talk about what leads to trafficking, and I don't want to hold the floor too long, but it's one of the issues.
We're not at City Hall.
Right, exactly. I'm used to having a little bit of having to get it out real quick.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that this particular issue in question for me hit me in the heart very hard, was because it's connected to homelessness. It's connected to drug abuse and drug addiction, rape, violence. Gangs. All of these things sort of fold into how someone gets into their life, and the struggles and getting back out and getting their life back to where it was, or to some sense of normal. And I don't think it's ever normal. And so for me, it was one of those things where I'm like, all right, I need to jump all in on this, because none of my colleagues, and not a shot at any of them, but nobody was working on it on the council. And so I was like, I got to make this a priority. This is something that we need to focus on in Baltimore. We have so many young people that go missing. Nationally.
I was gonna say, you have some
so nationally, what we found is that in 2016 alone, there were 30,000 kids nationally that went missing. 90% are runaways, but the stats show that 1 in 6 of those runaways will end up in the hands of a human trafficker within a week. Or 2 weeks. It's sort of the data point that we have. So that's a lot of young people.
Yes.
And when we talk about missing kids in Baltimore and runaways in Baltimore, we know that's an issue. You can look at the truancy data alone in the school system, and just in conversations that we've had with the school system, they've acknowledged that this is a challenge in both trying to identify it and trying to prevent it, because we have a lot of homeless young people. And so a lot of our young people will couch surf. Homelessness looks very different when we talk about kids. And so a lot of them don't have any adult in their life to monitor them, and they may have to do whatever they have to do in order to keep food in their belly and a roof over their head. And so they're particularly vulnerable. LGBTQ youth are extremely vulnerable and represent a high percentage of trafficking victims. And so we know that, again, this is something that, has a lot of overlap. But also what I see on the policy side is there's a lack of education around this issue. A lot of calls I get and correspondence I get from communities is that we have a problem with prostitution. And what I find is that people don't really know that, look, there are sex workers who are there because they want to be there, and that's their choice, and they should be able to make that choice. But there are a significant amount who are not there because they want to be there, and they don't have a way out. So that's what we're doing, and I'll talk about some of the events coming up. But that's the idea with the task force, is that we have several subcommittees that are trying to pull this all together, and one of them is a public awareness committee, because we know that if we can help people understand the depth and breadth of the issue, how to identify signs of trafficking either among their children and or people in their family, their neighborhoods, their kids, their neighbors, they can help out so they can know where to go. We have a victim services committee that has a large swath of organizations that help victims get back on their feet, find housing, find counseling, and other resources to turn things around. We have a law enforcement subcommittee that basically puts every law enforcement agency, the state's attorney's office, the judicial system, all in one room, and they share case ideas, they share strategies, they're talking to other law enforcement agencies. They are doing a tremendous amount of work on that committee, and then I chair the legislative committee, because obviously this is something that we have to work on as far as the policy lens. And I'll talk later about sort of some of the big policy things that we're working on in the city, some of the things that I've supported on the state level. But it's really very much an all hands on deck approach that we're trying to do.
And I like that. So one thing is, I really appreciate that ever since you've been elected, I just said he's been like boots on the ground. So I appreciate, first of all, shout out to Councilman Burnett, because he's our first elected official on here. But also, like I said, So second, what was the
Central Committee member here at the table?
Well, were they running or are they going? Okay, maybe I might back it up, but first councilman.
But Chris, I had a question though. So when you were saying that like it takes like a week for them to become like a victim of the trafficking and they run away, so what is the actual process on how long for them to get the services, like when they get in the system and till they get rescued or whatever the case may be, like how long before they can get the services needed in between the gap of time of being recovered and you know what I mean?
You want to take this one? I think you're better suited.
Well, first of all, I want to piggyback Angie for the mere fact of I've watched you, I participated when you did the on call and said we need a call to action in Baltimore City, and he had a plethora of resources show up. The room was completely standing room only, and because you took that charge, the specialties of the individuals that came in and gave that information was awesome. And you have not stopped since that very moment of shock of seeing that a teenager went missing and there was no resource that you're asking for right now. And fast tracking is the most important thing, because as we know, every 40 seconds a child is reported missing in this country, but every 30 seconds is for human traffic, which closes the gap. So I applaud you for that. And as the councilman also shared, is that right now it's still growing. Even though we're green and we've known about this for forever, it's not about see something, say something, it's see something, save someone. And knowing the levels of when someone is trafficked, that is a child or an adult by choice or force, how to get those right resources to them. And it's still being worked on. Right now, when someone enters, let's say, the hospital because of rape, as you shared before, or somebody was forced into human trafficking, just identifying where do I send that individual. It's a bucket across Baltimore City, but identifying is what the councilman is aggressively working on, which is really important. There are some current organizations that are, boots on the ground right now, like Loving Arms. They're the only 10 years organization that helps homeless children. Again, the councilman brought up the fact that so many of the children that are being trafficked start out with, and that survival sex is no joke. It is no joke. So certain locations have a time span. They may be available to get those resources for only 21 days. And if we can't get them that next level of aid and source to help them transition back into normalcy, getting a job, going back to school, then they're going to go right back out there again.
So what about far as the super young ones, like the 12 and 14 and 15 year olds? Like, so when they go in the system, they don't have like a group home or anything like that? I'm just asking because it seemed like, I'm a former educator, so I saw a lot of that in the school system, and a lot of times there's no follow-up after they leave out or they're put in the hands of a responsible adult. So how do they determine, or are they still working out the kinks to figure out who is the responsible adult to return them to? Or?
Well, two great things has happened. There's an RFI that went out last year in a pilot program 2 years ago in Baltimore County that actually showed teachers, like yourself, how to identify if a child was even being trafficked. That was number one. It has also happened in the hospital. Somebody can come in for a regular treatment in the hospital, but then the technician can either have questions that they ask or actually identify something on their, their bodies to do that. And that can fast track them to getting them better resources as well. But what you're building, which is going to be the life source of what human trafficking survival is going to be all about.
Yeah, so one of the bigger challenges, so if they're young, then they would go into the DSS care, into the foster system. But that also is where we hit sort of one of the big challenges, is there's not a lot of beds. There are very few beds regionally. Right. So that is the challenge that we hear from law enforcement, is that say they recover a young person or a group of young kids, which actually happened recently. The state's attorney's office did a major prosecution of a trafficker in downtown Baltimore. I think there were 26 young people they found, and in that ballpark, 20, over 20, all of them, and all of them were under the age of 17. So they're kids, and they were being trafficked through hotels in Baltimore City. The biggest challenge is when you have that many girls that are brought in, there's not 26 beds available, because a lot of the organizations that provide beds and wraparound services are also serving DC, they're serving other counties, and so that is a huge hurdle. And there's also not a lot of foster parents that want to take in children who have been sex trafficked specifically. So that is a big hurdle that we are working on, both in the state level to try and get more funding, to try and get more organizations registered. We're working to try and get more training for foster parents, so that they kind of have, there's a lot of misconceptions about kids, and they have a lot of trauma, right? I mean, they're being raped. This is rape. This is sexual assault. And so they've been assaulted. They may have addiction issues. They are viewed as being fast, or other, these notions that folks make up, and so they don't want to take the kids in. And so that is a hurdle, because then what ends up happening is that they don't have a place for them to stay, and they don't have caring adults in their lives, or wraparound services, or social worker to help guide them and along that path. A lot of times they'll just run away, and then we'll lose them again. And it's hard to find. I mean, we work very closely with law enforcement on this particular aspect, but that's what we hear back, is like, they're like, look, we even are reluctant to do some arrests, because they're just like, what happens when now we have 30 girls, 40 girls, 10 girls, or boys, or whatever, that now have no place to go. And so, and the kids know that. And so a lot of times for them, staying with the trafficker makes a lot more sense until they can find a viable way out. And so that's where we are working on some legislative pieces around, one bill we're going to be introducing is to try and proliferate the city in hotels and restaurants and bars with information on the National Human Trafficking Hotline, so that we're going to be trying to push that out, so that if there is a trafficking victim that's in a hotel and they go in the restroom, they'll see, hey, look, in very plain language, if you are not doing this because you want to be here, there is a way out. Here's a number. Call it as secretly as you can. And I know the organizations do that as well, where they'll go out into areas that they know. I think Turnaround has like little lip balms that they'll give out, would have like a little fake number. They'll do different things to try and hand off, so that the trafficker doesn't, your armbands, so the trafficker doesn't see, because these can be very abusive situations. So yeah, that's sort of where we are, but there is a gap that we're trying to fill when it comes to the beds and resources for organizations.
Just changing the mentality of the whole process, of the whole community about the issue. So.
And can I chime in real quick? And when it goes back to community and how the community can get involved, just like with foster care, you don't have to go the full distance. If you just want to be a host family, there are ways that you can actually just host for maybe 30 days, host for 60 days. Which is really important. I just want to throw that piece in.
And that provides that 30 days can be like,
definitely.
That's good. Now talking about collaboration and different agencies, we're going to bring in, I would like to hear the role of the state's attorney's office, or even your role as a human trafficking coordinator. If you could speak on that, Tiffany, about some things that you're seeing in your department of how you can help in this initiative.
So my role as the coordinator is just to coordinate with the many different units within the state's attorney's office. So there's the juvenile, there's the special victims, there's major major investigations unit. So my job is just to coordinate and make sure that anything that comes in the office is getting to the right unit so that we can all work together. We'll have meetings, we'll discuss anything that may be coming up that's, you know, an issue with law enforcement or something that I may have gotten from the Child Advocacy Center. My job is just to make sure we're tracking this, make sure that it's being followed through with, and if there is, you know, an actual case, then to connect the individuals or prosecutors in my office with the law enforcement or the witnesses or the victims or anything that comes about for a case. So I think it's a huge benefit to have a coordinator to coordinate all these pieces.
Absolutely. Everything you just said.
It's one office, but you know, they're so busy. You know, so you know, juvenile may not be able to always speak with major investigations for this specific cause. So you know, to have my role there kind of helps facilitate some of those conversations and passing along information. If it's not going to be a juvenile case, if it's going to be an SVU case, and just kind of make sure that they get the information that they need. So being a part of the collaborative is also a major part of my job. I started in June and hit the ground running. That was one of the first meetings I went to, was a collaborative meeting. I'm like, oh, I like this. Yes, I'm ready. So I actually really appreciate, you know, being born and raised here. This is actually near and dear to my heart. You know, my daughter, I have a 14-year-old that, you know, I tell her regularly how I feel about her. Not every young lady gets that, you know, not every young lady hears those things, and when she hears them, unfortunately, she's vulnerable at that point. So that's how some of these young ladies get into trafficking, and that's kind of why, for me, it's very personal. So it's work. And I love it, but it's also very personal to just make sure that I continue to do what I need to do to help the cause.
Absolutely. And then just talking about the collaborative efforts, we have asked Monique here. I love hearing your story, so we're going to talk about that briefly. But I love the fact that not only the agencies and you know, coordinating with different organizations, but those who, like you just said, the Loving Arms, Loving Arms? You know, you're known as Monique, or Cam. Like, these are still agencies that were already putting in the work, and you're not just saying push them out the way, but you're bringing them together. So kudos to that. And so I would like to hear your concept about the initiative about the, you know, the human trafficking
in your organization right now. Again, with the numbers being like they are, and this is a sad statistic that people don't realize, that within 2 hours of an abduction or someone goes missing, within 2 hours, with human trafficking being at the level that it is, that child is mentally abused, physically abused, mostly abused within 2 hours. That teenage, and it's not just girls, it is an increase of our young men are raped. Within that 2 hours, they could be transported to an entirely new different territory in another state. We're posting up flyers and missing person posters, and they could actually be out in another territory. They're new, they're fresh. We get new people in. We have casinos that are here. We have to really focus our attention on where the entertainment world is as well, just to make sure those same signage that you're talking about. I would love to see the casinos partner with you to do that there. It is so essential. And within those 2 hours, kids, they're brutally murdered. This is why it's so important that what you're doing and what we're doing collectively as educators, community leaders, activists, is to save children's lives and what's happening to the families. So we see this wonderful work of everyone pulling themselves together. And again, the human trafficking hotline is still the same. It's the 1-888-3737, 888. It's an easy number to remember. You become a first responder yourself. You don't have to Google it, you don't have to look for it, and those are the initiatives that you do. And record everything. Felicia Barnes lost her life because she went missing. And we had families that have campaigned, we've lobbied, got laws passed, the Felicia Barnes law. And we want law enforcement to know. And they've done a phenomenal job. They've actually now are constantly retraining to let officers know that when someone calls about a missing child, you can't say, well, maybe they ran away, or maybe they're over a friend's house. No, even if they are, document it and record it, get it down, and we have an information portal. We actually have a clearinghouse for missing persons for the state of Maryland. That too could be added. I think the only loophole that I see that we're missing, and if we show kids that we're going to find them faster to minimize them leaving, again, is that quick response. If we can fast track the minute that someone reports them missing from the police department level, the hospital level, the teachers level, and let them know, you're not going to be gone long. It's really important, and document it. And once it's inside of that portal, it's easy, because if they run away again. And a lot of times it's not that the child decides to go back out. The detectives here in Maryland have a multitude of cases where they'll actually house them in a hotel, as you mentioned, but they have to take their phone. The Johns, the pimps, they will convince them, come on out, you ain't gonna get me locked up. And they'll listen to that in fear. Even if they want to get out. Like you said, once you get into that life and the money, it's very difficult to get out. And the important reason, I'm a missing person, so I know I was trafficked. I still am unidentifiable. No one knows how old I am. I have no passport, I have no paperwork, which means that I know if resources like what you're building and the work that you guys are working on right now may have saved my life, may have given me another opportunity not to be abused. And I want to bring that part of the piece into the success of what we're doing because of the work that we've all done as advocates, which is really important. My goal is just to make sure that each person that I reach, let them know that we have now increases in resources, which is really important. Baltimore City is getting beat down, but when I see individuals like ourselves actually trying to spearhead what could actually get us above and to the next level, let other people model what we do, we're saving our young adults. So thank you for that.
Look, got me. I get chills every time I hear it. I'm waiting for Juan. Like,
we're fighting a $32 million industry, guys. That's no small task. I mean, and again, it's normally 7 years. Just imagine, we're working to rescue kids who the average window of them being a captive and a prisoner of their own bodies and mind is averaged at 7 years, and these are the Department of Justice national stats. This is huge.
Right. So, one thing that Councilman Burnett said is that, you know, well, I think you had majority of was runaway already, but we gotta even get into the root of why they're running away. Right, you know, so I love that, you know, you're looking at the entire picture. So I like that, one, they see that they're mostly runaway, and now we're trying to figure out why are they running away. What are some things needed? And like you just said, I think you said as well, is that you know, when you're desperate, you're hungry, you're gonna do things, and then like you just said, once you get involved in it and the money's coming and the, you know, whatever else, it's hard to get out. Even if you wanted to, you know, like I said, it could be a threat. It could be a lot of things. One of the things that I just looked on here for the flyer, this is what just stands out to me. It says mobilizing the community to end trafficking. That was my wow moment, because you're educating them. You've already done your research, you know, and still growing, but mobilizing the community. So we want to educate the community, because I've had people say, is it really a big deal here? Because it's just not being highlighted. And it really is a big deal here. So, you know, if anyone like to talk about, I know you gave me some numbers, but just talk about how big is this thing. I looked on, I had my little notes too. Beat you. But I had some notes here, and I'm not going to name them all, but they had articles, and it just says example of recent human trafficking prosecutions in Maryland. I mean, I would just highlight some. It was just saying, like, as far as the title, it was District Heights men charged for conspiring to commit sex trafficking. That was one of the title. Prince George's County, Hagerstown man, Gwen Oak man, Baltimore man, you know, Parkville, registered sex offender sentenced to 11 years, Odenton, a former police. This thing is huge. It's all throughout Maryland. It's a police officer. It's someone that was already on as a registered sex offender. Like, this thing is huge. And that was kind of what made me look at it's not a Baltimore City thing, it's a Maryland thing. It's you know, you even have some of your law enforcement that was charged for it, you know, and some people that are already registered. So how do you do that when you're registering a sex offender and they still do something? You know, they still got away with that, and so it's really hard, you know.
And talk about the dark web.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess I look at all of that, but I'm glad that you already have in your minds already that is a difficult task, but it's one that's well worth it.
Yeah.
You know.
So I'll hit a couple things. So the national, we had some stats from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. So from 2007 to 2017, there were 3,545 calls to the hotline. Of that, 898 were investigated. And they estimate, because again, it's a tricky issue, especially getting victims to, they might not know they're being trafficked, so that's one of the bigger hurdles. But there were 802 victims identified just in that 10-year period. And just last year, there were 446 calls, 138 human trafficking cases reported, and of those, 92 just last year were sex trafficking cases, 19 were labor trafficking cases, and 4 were sort of unspecified. But again, when we look at sort of the national data around that 1 in 6 number, we know that these numbers are a little bit short, right? Because a lot of people don't know about the hotline.
Right.
They don't know it exists.
Right.
They don't know what the number is or who to call,
Right.
and especially a lot of victims don't know that there's help out there, especially if you've been moved to another jurisdiction, which is a way that traffickers will try to disorient and control you. So if I'm moving you, from New York to Atlanta to DC, and a lot of this is happening, over the week, by weekend, or in the airport, BWIs, a lot of hotels that they'll move the victims through. So you may not even know where you are. You don't know who to reach out to. You don't have any way to call. They're monitoring your calls. You have limited access to your phone, and
So the hotels don't have any type of,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like, that's,
so there is some work being done there. So Councilman Kraft on the last city council passed a bill to require training for Baltimore City hotel staff to go through a training that's run by the Department of Justice when they're hired. We are working on building that bill out because it's a one-time training, and this is something that I think you sort of need to hear a couple times. And there's also required posting that the folks have gone through the training, but then, like I said, there's some hotels that make a lot of money off of it too, right? So that's the other piece of it, is that if they
That's why I said that thing is deep.
and this is why, they're making it. Hey, look, I'm just being real.
Yes.
So this is also why Baltimore City outlawed hourly rate hotels.
Right.
So because you would used to be able to rent a hotel by an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours at a time.
No longer.
So you can't do that anymore.
Right.
And so and that's why the bill that we're talking about putting in that would require posting in every single hotel room, so that it sort of works around that piece. But then the training is critical, because people may not know. They may see an older adult and a young girl and assume, is that a brother, daughter, or father, daughter, grandpa? You know what I mean? What's going on here? But then you can also see if is there a whole bunch of men coming in and out of that particular hotel room. You're supposed to say something, right? And so, like I said, for us, it's like that awareness piece is critical, so that people know that when they see something. I mean, you mentioned the schools. There's a lot of work being done to train teachers on what to identify.
because there's so much, as a mandatory reporter, I mean, just so much red tape you got to go through, even when you're, reporting a suspected abuse. So I can imagine the amount of red tape you would have to go through, or the lot of hoops you got to go through for something that's severe as, sex trafficking.
Yeah, and I mean, and there's signs that you can look at. So one of the ways that traffickers will try to take advantage and coerce young people is, they'll buy them a phone, they'll get their hair done, they'll put them up in a hotel for the weekend, new shoes, new jeans, and then they'll say, well, look, if you want to keep doing, you like this stuff, you're gonna have to do a little something for me.
Especially if they didn't have already.
I used to make my little girls in my class take off they had too much lipstick on and stuff like that, even if it wasn't a situation like that, just because of how the energy was being brought around them from just the other men and different. You got all types of people working in schools these days.
And then there's other forms that it comes in too. So you have, again, that we only mentioned the survival sex piece, right? But sometimes you have adults that will traffic their kids.
Right.
The BG&E bill is a little short. The lights are going to go up. I need you to do something. That happens. Like, it happens a lot. And so those can be entrees into that life. That might be the first. Every victim has a story, or every survivor has a story as to how they got into it, and they're unique. But there are trends that we can see.
So it's a lot of mental work you got to do after the fact. More than anything.
Yeah, because a lot of it's coercive. I mean, in Baltimore, and maybe I'm speaking wrong, but my understanding is that there's not a lot of the guerrilla pimps. It's more the coercive sort of work around just like building a relationship and trying to foster that, and they're in a relationship. And so what we've heard from law enforcement is a lot of times the survivors may not realize that they're being trafficked in the first place.
We switched it up on the street level of what we call guerrilla pimps, because at the end of the day, some of the gangs.
Is that you?
Whose alarm is that? A lot of the gang members are what we call a guerrilla pimp. So, of course, possession is one thing for the law. You no longer have to worry about it. The madams now are women. So, we used to seeing a man kind of control the atmosphere. Now there are females that are doing that. To get back to your inquiry about the levels and how big human trafficking is, other than just the sex proportion of it, because we're really honing in, there's still labor trafficking is still big. The foreign component of what's going on is that I personally have not seen any organ harvesting or any of that thing of that nature when it came to human trafficking.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the types?
Yeah.
So it's the
Human trafficking, sex trafficking, and labor trafficking, and domestic servitude.
Yeah, and I mean in the labor trafficking, you see a lot among undocumented immigrants, where they are being paid under the table, or having their wages garnished. But a lot of it is very prevalent in the immigrant community because these folks are very vulnerable. They don't want to seek help or support because they may not have the proper papers to be here.
I had several coming to my business in Fells Point asking for work. I didn't no work, but
and so we see that sort of predatory, and then you'll have issues. I've heard stories where there've been workers who may be driven out to other municipalities and then left there under like, we're not going to pay you for your days of work, and what are you going to do? Who are you going to call? I'll call ICE on you. So that's a huge issue that actually the Baltimore City Office of Civil Rights has a labor trafficking task force that they work to try and identify these issues. They are very under-resourced. So I've been working with Senator-elect Carter, who used to,
everybody's mentioned. I just keep tagging them on here.
The bill. She actually was the one who spearheaded the bill and sponsored it.
Be tagging her on here today.
So it was very successful. And then what I love about what you were sharing about your daughter, I think parents, you've got to get involved. We haven't touched on that. It is so important to have that what you think is an unnecessary conversation. It's unnecessary conversation. You think that you're trusting your children, and you probably are. Again, unbeknownst to the child, they don't even know that they're being groomed. Like, oh, good job, nice job today. So that person's inappropriately touching you, but they've reached your comfort zone. So you've got to have it. And it's back to school time, guys. This is the time that we're talking about it now. We still need to have that conversation because it is part of not just your book bags and your shoes. Mentally, are you prepared to make sure not just for bullying, but when it comes to human trafficking.
Monitoring the social media,
monitoring the social media.
I'm about to say social media is.
Well, let me tell you, I pay the phone bill. If I can't get in this phone, you can't have this phone. That's how that phone works. If I can't get into it, we got a problem.
There was a recent case in I think San Diego where they stopped a 14-year-old and 16-year-old at the airport. They had one little bag, and luckily the gate agent thought something was wrong.
They get training now.
Yeah, because they had a one-way ticket to New York City and thought they were going out there to be models. And
I was going to say
the employment ads.
I was going to say my daughter this was last year, right before she went to college. She received a letter. I still had it. I don't know if I sent it to you or not, but it was a letter stating about a modeling call. But it was so fishy, And so that's.
Well, these kids were at the airport.
And that was on Instagram.
Wow. They didn't even realize they had a one-way ticket.
Yeah.
And so the gate agent caught it, and then when they did more investigation, they found that this person was grooming them for a year on Instagram. And the DMs.
Yes.
Highlighting how beautiful you are, get you out of New York, and he bought them the tickets, one-way tickets, and they were not going to come back. And like I said, those are the kind of things that
they are really
monitor that, right? Looking what's going on in these phones. Who are these people? Who are they? Just investigating who's in your kids' lives and ask questions so that because they don't know what's best all the time, and then they may not understand what they're getting themselves into.
And teach them to tell. Teach them to tell. You can say, if you're scared, I know I told you not to do certain things. Don't go to the mall alone. Don't sneak out with a guy. Don't sneak out with a man or sneak out with a girl. At the end of the day, the minute that you feel harmed, because that's when the shock factor hits. You're trapped.
When something doesn't feel right,
when it doesn't feel right, and you have to convince the person that you're with that you made the wrong decision. You have to keep it clear. But if you don't teach them to tell, and then when it goes back to the educational piece, what you do is you may have to tell somebody more than once, because you may not understand what I'm trying to say is that he touched me. Girl, he wasn't doing anything. And you kind of
we'll be touching on that subject.
So teach them to tell, and then tell until they get their message heard. They gotta get that.
Absolutely.
So that's important.
I know one thing. God has really been working on me right now, because not only do I want to talk about this, he just put on my heart just to talk about domestic violence, sexual abuse, and I had you on before to talk about missing children, but these are the things that people don't want to talk about. Talking is good. It doesn't mean you got to see a psychiatrist and get medicine. Talking is so good. So you made a great point of just talking to your children, because and even like when my child got on Instagram, I got on Instagram. I'm learning it, you know.
Yes.
Instagram, I'll be forgetting. But you know, they get to the point where they're like, oh, Facebook is for old people. They get an Instagram, then they go Snapchat. But the point I'm trying to make is that they're moving, and we can be like, oh, they just doing X, Y, Z. But someone's ahead of them, already knowing how to bait them in, you know. And so you just made a great point. Like they're doing anything. Your model call. Who wouldn't want to go to a model call, you know? And to know this is not even a building that they even exist or anything, you know. So it's kind of scary.
Like Backpage.
It's
large Backpage was, and now you have these other sites where people
it's scary.
It's an epidemic that's basically everywhere.
It's
and I want to point out, you know, this conversation we talk a lot about like grooming, the relationships, the social media, and I think it's important that we focus on that piece because you know, watching SVU and these other TV shows will have you thinking that it's just like everything is fine as long as they're not a white man that's going to jump out and grab you. Like that's not how this works.
It's not the sketchy looking guy per se, but
it's not a dude in a trench coat following you through the mall.
The clowns, they're gone. The clowns are gone.
The
clowns are gone.
It's a little bit more complex.
They've got it now creative. You know? So Juan, you got it.
No, I'm just overwhelmed by all.
He said he wasn't. He was like, I'm just going to bring all this in. He just like really.
You know, it's sad as you ride around the city to see as many young people homeless. So to know that that's part of the process, you know what I mean? I had an idea, but to have the in-depth conversation like this, I mean, I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing on that front. So if anything that we can do on our end, a Healthy People Juice to support, please let me know.
So
so I was gonna say we're gonna get right into this next one.
I'll jump on that. I'll take the bait.
There you go.
I'm just overwhelmed.
There you go.
One of the big announcements. It's a lot, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
There's some light there.
And
so we're gonna get right into
a couple things we got. So one on August 30th, 6:30 to 8 at Wayland Baptist Church, which is 3200 Garrison Boulevard. We're going to be having a mobilizing the community to end human trafficking event. It's a panel that you can come out to. It is free. We will also feed you, but bring friends, family, neighbors out so that you can learn more about this issue, learn more about the work being done, the organizations there'll be resources there. We'll have posters with the hotline. We'll have a whole lot to educate people, and we're going to be doing these throughout the year. So our goal is to do these on a rotating basis in different parts of the city, so that this is something that we continue to do. How do you find out about this stuff? On Facebook, you can search for BC Human Trafficking. On Twitter, we're on BCHT Collab. On Instagram, we're on BCHT Collab.
We're gonna make sure we add all this.
So you can throw it on there. It's all on my social media. So we've done tabling at different events. Our first tabling outreach was at AFRAM. We had a really good, really successful event there. We had billboards up, and we're trying to get more with the hotline. And I'd say the biggest announcement that I'll add is I was able to secure $300,000 in this year's city budget to create.
Wait a minute. We didn't even say to create what?
To create a human trafficking victims fund.
Oh,
so in talking to organizational leaders that do this kind of day-to-day on-the-ground work, they need help. And so we have a grant fund that's going to be coming online hopefully October 1st. That's our goal, where the application will go live. Of course, we'll do a big event on that and try and get the word out. I'll be happy to come back and talk about it. But the idea is we got to get resources. If you want me, I'll come back. I love the show. But we want to make sure that organizations that are helping victims turn their lives around, find that stability, have resources. And so we've talked to a number of groups that like, what do you need? And sort of that's how we arrived at that number, knowing that, you know, we want to try and grow this over time. The ultimate goal is to have it as a standalone entity that people can contribute to and donate to, and we can continue to grow that, because we know that when I mentioned before, there's a lot of beds. There's a need for training, there's a need for resources and outreach materials and a lot that goes into filling that gap to help with the service piece. And so I'm thankful to the mayor's office to working with me on that and get that in the budget this year. And so stay tuned for more.
That's good, man. That's good because one thing like working in group homes and things like that over the years, you have a lot of people that are making a lot of money off the backs of poor people and their struggles. You know what I mean? And a lot of these kids are just left.
Yes, Lord.
A lot of these kids are just left to fend for themselves. Like I've worked in group homes where they wouldn't feed the kids properly, taking their checks, and you know what I mean. Like I was the one that was the whistleblower, but I mean I don't like to see things happen, people being mistreated. Yeah. But at the same time, it's just like, how is that going to be part of the legislation? Or not legislation, but are you going to have like a separate group like monitoring, or like what is the integrity piece for new organizations that may want to come up? Because we have all these youth funds and people doing all these things. How do we make sure that the newer organizations will be held accountable? You know what I mean, and not just getting the money. You know what I mean? We want new groups to apply that are coming out. This is, we're not trying to create another pot of money for other agencies to get funding from, but for new startups like Loving Arms and Turnaround and Aramenta, there's a lot of groups that do really good work that can use the resources and who can apply. So it's not a closed door. We want to keep it open. As far as the task force meetings, those are open. I mean, we try their work spaces, so it's not a whole lot of we do announcements of what's happening and what's going on. But it is a work group, right? My vision for the collaborative was that we work. We're getting stuff done, and we are working hard. But but the other piece to your point about like the group homes, again, it's that awareness, that education to help young people understand what's out there, to identify signs of things that aren't right. But also a lot of them stay trapped because they don't know where else to go. They don't know where to go. Then they're in city agencies that work with them, and then like the mentors are like forging down. It just be so much I done seen over the years. It just be like.
Accountability.
I work with a youth right now. I'm not going to say the organization, but he has a mentor, and the mentor worked with him for 6 months. He don't even have an ID. You know what I mean? So I'm like, that's the least he can do if he's going to be shaving points off of his, having you sign and not see you. At least can make sure you get the bare essentials that you need to move around in Baltimore.
So I think you're looking for more of proof and sustainability.
Yeah,
so
like accountability.
Make sure that the ones who are applying for that kind of money to get any of those resources first have to be. I would, make sure there's a section that proves what they've done in previous years. I mean, because when you're that new, it's almost like we don't need you to do this by trial by error because the money is available. You have a vision and a dream. It's more or less let's really hone in on the people who have been doing it for a while, and then you look to them for leadership or mentorship.
That's a good point. So the committee that is going to review the applications are going to be made up of folks that are on the task force that are doing the work and sort of know the lay of the land. So it won't be me approving them.
I still have a lot to learn. Like the victims are like, it becomes like a community of like, they get help and then they come back and help the next person because the person that can help you, the person that can relate to what you've been through. You know what I mean? Like, so we have a lot of youth that's on drugs right now, but there is not too many drug rehabilitation centers centered around young people. Drug addiction. So they get housed with older, and they learn how to be better junkies instead of being, So I just want to make sure that is still, at
we're going to do everything to maintain the integrity of the program. We do value that. That's a great point, and it's something that we talked about. But we also don't want. So you mentioned the youth fund, so I'll spend 8 seconds on that. And that the intent of that fund was to help organizations that typically have a hard time with foundations to get funding. So we're trying to work with a similar mindset. So we know that there are very large organizations that do work but also don't have a hard time getting funding, and there's some that are new and small but are actually really out here
doing the work.
And so we're trying to thread the needle where we do have a fund that's available for all, right? We do want to support the big groups, but we also want to grow the small ones that are really doing the outreach, because we talk to a lot of small organizations that have like 2 or 3 staff members, but they're out there every Friday night, every Saturday night. You know what I mean? They're really doing it. I know I was going to hit that. So my vision is that we help those groups grow and build capacity, right? Because what's best. The community. In this instance, we have a survivor here, so that lifestyle, understanding what they're going through is critical in providing service. For me, I couldn't run that group, right? Because I don't know anything about it. I've never been through it, and I mean, my heart is in it, and I'm willing to throw all my weight behind it. But I also know that this effort needs to be led by people who have experienced the work and are really, really grinding, and I would just need to be the wind behind their wings, saying, you know, whatever you need.
I already knew you was gonna be a good councilman just from the work you did with 300 and stuff like that. So I already knew.
Look at that.
We go back.
I always say.
You reach. I love everything that you just said about not being a better junkie, but each child that you assist when it comes, I've witnessed it myself with the youth, is that they become advocates themselves.
Yes, they do.
They warn other children.
Yes,
they warn other teens. They warn other students that this is not what you want.
This is not what you want.
Well, you know, they again mention what's going on. So every speaking engagement that I've had, I've actually shown them or tried to tell them how to alarm an adult if that we see something going on. So that's a great point because they become advocates themselves, and we arm them with what they need to catapult themselves into the next generation, and I love that.
Wonderful. Wow. It's like a whole lot going on. I want to say that you picked the perfect location because Garrison Boulevard has a lot in that area. Okay.
That's my name.
When we were doing door knocking, it's funny you mentioned that. We were door knocking for this last week. It was really hot outside, and we'll be out there tomorrow.
Oh, you're going to be out tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow.
I may be able to help. What time are y'all going?
4 o'clock.
4?
Yeah, we in church.
I'll be.
So
I'll be at work.
We'll be out there. It's gonna be hot, but I talked to one guy who handed him a flyer. I was kind of explaining what it was, and he said to me, "I'm glad you're doing something about this because the girls seem to be getting younger and younger out here." And
that's what I said. You have a
and he's like, "I didn't know who to call, what to do, so I will be there." And this is literally so. Please come out. Like I said, there's a huge issue that is just not being talked about enough. And that's why I said.
That's why I was like, God gave me a charge, and it's the women that. I can't even say things that we're dealing with right now, but there are some things that we need to address, and we need to address it without just unapologetic. I'm not sitting here, and if it's going to rub you the wrong way, if it's going to hurt your feelings, it's going to be fine. But we have to address these things because this is what they don't want to hear. They don't want someone to get out of it. Again, the ones that are doing it, they're 2 steps ahead of us. So we gotta get with the program. We gotta work together. And again, I love, that's just the whole vision for Restoring the Village is us coming together, working together. Again, if there's anything that we can do, I'll do that. 4 o'clock, I'll be at work, unless you all want me to be a councilman. 2020 be here. But I will be able to at least, if not anything, make sure I keep sharing this video. Make sure I share the flyer. I'm getting messages saying make sure that we post the flyer and all of the social media outlets that you have. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for stepping out when you saw a void or you saw that it wasn't being addressed, and again, it's not to point fingers, it's just to say that you took the step, and we got your back, and everybody else. This table shows you got business, you got communities, you got organization, you got agencies. So well, community. Okay, she's half and half, but you said all hands on deck. And that is the approach that we should be having.
And I do appreciate the councilman. When I started in June, hit the ground running.
Oh yeah, like I said, I've been watching him.
Stopping.
I'm not surprised.
It's
definitely not surprised.
I've been watching.
He's reachable, approachable. He's there. It's not like he's sending someone else to do the work. Councilman's doing the work.
No, I see him. I see him. Yeah, his little pop-up resources, everything. That's just awesome.
I saw that too. Go District
Everson
8.
Village.
There you go.
Pop-up resource there.
There you go.
So as we're coming to close, we're gonna do our little shout outs like he just did, the pop-up resources. But I want you all just to say how people can, again, just putting out the event information, how people can get in contact with you, and then we can kind of go around. I would love to have you back on the show. She did a whole segment of missing children. I mean, we don't have the time to even go in to dive into that, but it was so much of. Now I find myself doing things as far as what I watched my child, what she had on, what she did, our codes, Speaking of codes, I wrote down, so I did see the National Human Trafficking Hotline is the 1-888-3737-888. So I got it because how she was saying it, but I'm sorry I said it so fast. So 1-888-373-7888. But what I also saw was the Be Free text line. Is that being utilized a lot? Okay. So I saw that you can text help to 233-733. Again, you can text HELP to 233-733. I wanted to just briefly, if you could, let me know if someone did text that, what happens? Is it some kind of, you know, I like to just know the
so they'll call,
outline.
They get a call back, and they'll ask them where they are. They try to connect them to the nearest resources. They send that information to law enforcement as well. So law enforcement gets that data, and they're on it. I mean,
so they checking your phone location or something,
no,
or
they're
no?
not doing all that.
Okay, that's what I was just wondering. Like once you text, like what happens?
Yeah, no, you'll get.
And you know they got laws.
This is a few step program.
Yeah.
No, they'll reach out. They'll try and get information on where you are, if you know where you are,
Okay.
who you're with, descriptions of the trafficker.
Okay, I was just wondering.
That information is shared with law enforcement, both at the state level and local level, depending on where you are.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, I'd like to know what happens because, you know, you don't want nobody just be putting help.
Well, you can also text info. It's info or help. So you can text info or help because you may know something else that's going on. It may not be you. You may not need the actual help. You might just want information. So you can text info or help.
And one of the things I forgot to mention is we are working with Mercy Hospital to update. They have an app that's already in the App Store. If you use Google Play or iTunes Store, called Be More Safe. And right now it's populated with a lot of information around trauma and domestic violence and sexual assault and resources that are out there. We're working to get information in there about human trafficking. So it's worth downloading right now anyway to get information on those other,
Be More Safe.
Yeah, Be More Safe. App. Yep, Mercy Medical Hospital.
Is it B? I was gonna say.
Yeah, I'm sorry. BMORE.
That's what I have right here.
SAFE.
Yep. Okay.
And it's in both Google and Apple. And so we're up there. I didn't make that announcement at first because we haven't fully done the re-update yet, but it's good to download anyway. I have it on my phone right now. Yep.
Now, are you able to provide me with any statistics that I can just put on the page or whatever you may have that maybe I can just start putting things or a link? You know,
yeah. So I just like
to make sure. Yeah, I was gonna say I like to make sure that we put that information that I always say, did you know? You know, because I think it's very important. Right. So we're gonna do that out around. If you can let people know how to get in contact with you through the state's attorney's office or whatever. Not even okay. It don't have to be state's attorney's office. Okay, well just shout them out. Shout them out at least. Like if they need to get in contact.
Yeah, I mean if it's about human trafficking, you have any questions, you can also always reach the human trafficking hotline. But you can also reach any of us through the collaborative page, which is probably the best bet if you have questions. You know, if you have an emergency situation, 911 is probably your best.
That's true. Yeah, I was gonna say I always listen to Ask Monique, and she's like, look, did you notify the police?
Yes, you know, let's not waste time on social media and all that. Get 911 if you need it. But I mean, I can be reached at the state's attorney's office. My email is tmaclin@stattorney.org. If anybody has any questions,
and
please feel free to email.
That's just if any other organizations want to.
Yeah, you got to run it
back.
Yeah,
you got to run it back.
A little bit slow.
One more again.
No, it was fast on purpose. No.
I kind of figured that.
So it's
no, slow it down.
So it's tmaclin@stattorney.org.
And they slowed it down.
She made it. She made it.
Slowed it down by like.
And I'm Tiffany.
1.
That was good though, right?
It was great. It was very clear.
Yes.
Thank you guys for having us. I appreciate it. Let me know if anybody needs anything. I can try to help. Link you to resources.
Not try.
I will.
We go way
back.
I
will. Yes. And thank you. Yes, because you know.
All right. Sorry.
So
sorry. We got this.
No,
it's false staff days. Way back.
Yeah, I was gonna say we go way back in middle school. Yeah.
That was like a couple years ago.
Oh, you did
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, you can BaltimoreCityCouncil.com. Email is, I'm gonna slow it down.
Nice and slow.
KRISTERFER Burnett, BURNETT, at baltimorecity.gov. If you just go on the council's webpage, it's all on there. Phone number is 410-396-4818.
So I'm talking about phone numbers.
Call me. And I'm on every social media platform.
True that.
Except for, I don't know how to use the Snapchat. So
I'm not even interested. I'm not even interested.
I'm working on it.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah.
You can follow me.
I'm not interested.
And follow the play-by-play. You can come down to City Hall. I serve on the Public Safety Committee, among others. And this is actually, so stay tuned. We're also going to do a hearing on trafficking again to sort of highlight the collaborative's work. Probably do something closer to our 1-year anniversary to just sort of report out of what's been done in that first year. So stay tuned for that as well.
All right. I'll make sure I put all this information.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm known as Monique, and I'm on all social media platforms known as Monique. We actually, the police department does not do missing person flyers. So we do the volunteer work of doing that. So once you actually file a police report, get the statistics and information to us, we can actually create a flyer. And then we also have ways to support with recovery efforts. So when a child goes missing, we want teams on the ground to help law enforcement actually recover. So because it's a voluntary piece, moms, dads, your friends, your neighbors can actually come out and post up missing person flyers. We don't do it often, which because we recommend working with law enforcement directly. We don't hinder their ability to get the child home and then kind of be in a way. But again, known as Monique on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Email known as Monique@yahoo.com, which is important. I want to do a quick shout out again to Loving Arms because they are the only youth runaway human trafficking entity that's already rendering service, and they have a walk coming up September the 15th to register, and 100% of the proceeds goes to the resources needed when it comes to the bedding, actually rescuing them. They get to stay for 21 days, and the best part about this is they offer mediation. Mediation is key when kids are running away. When you said, Angie, earlier, what is the root cause of this? Is it financial at home? What do they want at home? Is it abuse? And it gets back to quickly identifying it. And that will be on my page. Loving Arms is called the 5K run, 2K walk to end homelessness in the youth community. And that's going to be at Montebello, and I'll post that. Okay. Thank you so much for giving me that, because
I'll be there.
Until your first, oh, that's right, I reached out to the councilman, and he said yes, he would actually be there. Thank you so much. But the key is until, the resources that you're bringing available, as long as we can keep that door open till you come rescue us, we're good. Okay? And thank you again, Angie.
You are very, very welcome.
Nice.
I'm gonna have Juan bring us out of here. I'm just all full. Like I don't even know how to end this. It's like we need a part 2 or something. This is amazing. Oh, wait a minute. I do want to say we do have a group page, the RTV radio show. So everything we talked about, even if you want to just drop it in that page, I'm just trying to separate my life with everything I got going on. So I got this end, this page, that one. So everything we talked about, I can at least have everyone go to that page for flyers or anything else. Okay. All right.
Yes, I just want to thank the guests for coming out. Thank you for all the work that you do, and for all the listeners out there. I mean, we're one community. We're here to do one cause. We're here to continue to inspire young people. If you're not helping young people, what are you existing for? That's the purpose. We should be helping the next generation like how they helped us. So again, thank you for all that you do. I'm going to continue to do the work that I do, and I can support the work that you guys do in any way. That's the whole purpose of what we're doing. We're trying to really stop young people from getting to that point by providing opportunities. You know what I mean? And that's my goal. That's why I left the school system. So I just encourage everyone to continue to do the work that you're doing and be an expert and be great at what you do. That's everybody in our community, and I love the collaborative aspect. So let's continue to collaborate. Peace and health, everyone. Have a great evening.
All right. Awesome. Peace and health.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'm about to all my replay viewers.
Where my DJ at?